Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. So today we're going to talk about another change that has been announced. It seemed like the past month there was like nothing to report on in DDO, which is partially why I didn't make really any videos. But like last week or two, they've just shot out tons and tons of changes just because the next update's coming up, I suppose. But anyways, let's talk about Reaper changes. So they've made quite a lot of changes to Reaper. One of the things that I've talked about before on this channel is I thought they should revisit Reaper every once in a while and look into buffing it, and they're doing that. It looks like they are going to do some things that are going to make Reaper harder, and they're going to do some things just to switch up the meta. So let's just get into this. Okay, so greetings. And this was again posted by Coco Majobo, but signed by Seb. So I think this means that the executive producer wrote this, and then Coco Majobo posted it. That's just what I'm assuming. But anyways, greetings. I wanted to go over some changes to Reaper difficulty that are deployed on the test server, and some changes which are coming up soon. We hope players can look at the changes. First, I want to discuss our goals for the changes. High level Reaper should not take as long to kill bosses and special enemies with high hit point pools, though we want to retain difficulty. We don't want Reaper easier, but we do want killing bosses to be a bit faster. Okay, that sounds reasonable, I guess. Whatever. Next, we want to make it a bit harder to keep everything locked down with CC. That's probably not going to be a very popular change. Reaper levels 1 to 2 should be a bit harder as compared to Elite. And we want to shake up the meta a bit. Yeah, making Reaper 1 and 2 harder is probably a thing they want to do, not just because power creep has happened since Reaper's been introduced, it really hasn't been touched. So it's been getting easier and easier in comparison. And just my opinion in the way they've initially framed what Reaper's supposed to be is it's supposed to be a challenge difficulty. So it only makes sense for them to revisit it every once in a while, make it harder to compensate for all the power creep that happens every year, because we continuously get new gear, new past lives, all that stuff. So to me, it only makes sense to buff Reaper every once in a while. So they go into more changes here. Oh, and with Reaper 1 and 2, there's been a lot of complaints. Not really complaints, but just people have pointed out that once you get a certain number of Reaper points, Reaper 1 becomes easier than Elite does, according to a lot of players. And that's really true. Like Reaper 1 at first, when you don't have any Reaper points, definitely doesn't feel easier than Elite. But after you get a bunch of Reaper points, in a group especially, I don't know about soloing, but in a group especially, does feel easier than Elite. So that's probably why they're targeting that. So let's go ahead and continue. So here are some changes on the test server. 1. Creatures in High Skull Reaper have a lesser amount of DR than they do now. Not only does the damage resistance ramp up more slowly, but resistance to ranged in magic is further reduced to match melee resistance. Currently, the damage resistance for melee is actually lower than for ranged in magic, so in the new system, the reduction for melee, ranged in magic will all be equal, with magic and range catching up to melee damage. So yeah, that's something that so a buff for ranged and offensive casters. This might be something they're doing related to the sorcerer pass. I'm not totally sure, but that would make sense. I know they have been looking at ways to make sorcerers really make more sense in the Reapers and not just run out of spell points. So I guess if you're an offensive caster or a nuker, you're going to do more damage. If you're an archer or thrower or whatever, you're going to do more damage. So yeah, that's cool. So that's actually a nerf to Reaper. Okay, so then he goes into, I don't need to read this. They go into the details about how the formula is going to change mathematically. Read that if you want. But basically saying this will make taking down creatures with large hit point pools less of a slog at higher Reaper skulls. To be clear, the decrease to DR scales with Reaper level. At lower Reaper levels, the change to damage won't be as noticeable. So this is going to make really taking down creatures like large like in bosses and stuff a little bit easier. So I don't know if this is necessarily going to make it easier. It might just make it less time standing there with auto attack on the final bosses or whatever. So whatever, that's fine. No issues there. So here's a big change. Number 2, the base damage multiplier for hitting helpless creatures will be lowered from a 1.5 multiplier to 1.25. Helplessness will provide a less damage increase. So they have really been nerfing helplessness. They've nerfed it with the legendary dreadnought changes, and now they're going to nerf the base damage and Reaper for mace multiplier for helplessness in general. So I mean that really hurts melees for sure. Yeah, the thing with the way the meta has been, and I guess this is something they want to push players a little bit away from, is that everyone that builds for melee in the past several years has been building for crits, and I guess this might help us say like two-handed fighting be more viable, because when you do cleaves, for example, you can't get crits from a cleave. So maybe it will make glancing blow damage more helpful. Maybe they'll do something with this. Might just be an effort to make two-handed fighting more balanced with the other styles. I don't really know. I mean, there's some really awesome melee builds that are really fast and didn't do a lot of crit damage, and yeah, for whatever reason they're nerfing that, so that'll make Reaper harder. But it just seemed weird to I don't know. I guess it's fine. I mean, I'm not gonna be a hypocrite. I said I think they should make Reaper harder, so I shouldn't just complain just because something affects the type of builds I like to run. So yeah, I guess that's fine. I just want to make sure that they don't screw up the balance between like melee and casters and Reaper. I think the opinion of most players is that melees already have the harder end of the stick when it comes to being viable in Reaper. So yeah, hopefully they're, if they don't do too nuts with that. But yeah, helplessness will be less. Really, this helps. This might not be as much of a nerf as you'd think, since a lot of the times with helpless creatures, if they're helpless, they die really quick anyways. Just because you do so much damage to helpless. So reducing that a bit may not be, I mean, it's definitely a nerf, but it may not be a absolute killer. It's not an absolute killer to melee or anything, I don't think. Anyways, so number 3, it will be slightly harder to keep creatures locked down. First, Reaper creatures will have an additional +4 to their saving throws versus spells. In addition, the formula for reducing the duration of crowd control will be tweaked, so crowd control durations reductions ramp up more quickly by about 25% at Reaper 10. As an example, an unmodified caster level 20 mass hold would be reduced on live to 12 seconds in duration on Reaper 10. The same spell will reduce to 9.6 seconds. The minimum duration of 6 seconds still applies. So when you hold stuff, when you CC stuff, it's going to remain held in Reaper for a short duration of time. That's what that means. And the DC for Reaper creatures has gone up by +4. So, that's one of those things where past lives are going to be more important than they were. And this is one of the things with past lives. Like, as they introduce more past lives, they're going to increase the difficulty to balance those out, so that stuff doesn't get too trivial for the really, really top players. So yeah, so they're definitely putting a lot of hits here to the meta of walk into a Reaper room of mobs, CC everything, and then have the caster, the DPS tune just go to town, which has been a really viable strat on Reaper for sure. Like CC and Reaper is really important, so I guess they want to make CC less good. Okay, and they also say, as an example, at Reaper 5, each saving throw a monster makes is increased by a randomized number between 1 and 15 on live. It would be 1 and 20 going forward. So that means the saving throws could be better for Reaper creatures. So again, you need better DCs. Number 4, and this is the actually big buff, and they've talked about this before. Tank threat will be increased dramatically. Tank defensive stances, threat increases in unyielding sentinel, and scaling threat itemization effects have had their values tripled from what they are currently. And I've already talked about this in my class pass video, which our Epic Destiny Pass video, which I uploaded a month or 2 ago. So they've already talked about this, but let's continue. And I've talked about this, and they've talked about this. They continue. Note that this is a larger increase for unyielding sentinel than previously noted. Our goal is that tanks should be able to hold threat by delivering damage to enemies when things are immune to intimidate, assuming the tank has these increases and DPS is smart about burst damage. So that's one way. So maybe melees are being hurt a little bit with the helpless damage, but melees are being definitely buffed when it comes to being able to hold aggro. So tanks are going to be better in Reaper. So that's good. That's awesome. And they've really, not only did they didn't just increase this a little bit, they've dramatically increased this as they've described in the class passes. And Sev here has even said that they've upped it even more than what they previously indicated. So they made some really, really large threat increases. So the certain threat attacks will just cause tons of threat. So tanks are going to be able to hold aggro better and get aggro better. And it seems they want to make the CC meta shift more towards tanks and less towards just hold spells and whatever, like Earthquake, whatever else CC spells you might have. So that's cool. That's interesting. I don't really play a tank, but okay. We'll see how that goes. Number 5, monster spell penetration rolls are increased on live by a randomized number between 1 and Reaper level times 3. This would be increased to a randomized number between 1 and Reaper level times 4. This does not affect the player's ability to penetrate monster spell penetration, only attacks on players from monsters. So the monster spell penetration rolls are increased on players. I don't know of a lot of players who really push spell resistance. I think some barbarians, I've seen barbarian builds that do that. They try to have a really high spell resistance, but that sounds like a change that's not really going to affect many players, just because players typically go for saves, not just spell penetration, having a really high spell resistance. So yeah, so okay, whatever. I don't think that's really a big change. Number 6, incorporeality will be reduced in Reaper by the same amount as blur and displacement. I don't know what that means specifically. Blur and displacement are different chances to have an attack miss you than incorporeality. Incorporeality can vary. Blur is 20%, displacement is a 50%, so those stack with incorporeality. I don't really know what this means. I wish they would have been more clear. Yeah, I'm gonna have to, if anyone knows what that means, please tell me. I don't really understand what he's trying to say here. I wish he would be more specific by exactly what he means by reduce. And is he referring to players or monsters? I don't know. Let's just continue. 7, dodge will have across all difficulties an absolute cap of 95. And I saw some commenters be upset about this because there are some ways to get up to 100% that involve using some temporary boosts. I don't think you can get up to 100% permanently, but I believe some builds can get up to 100% temporarily. And so that's a bit of a nerf to your like monk and rogue builds, whoever might get to 100% dodge, although there's probably not too many players. So I see that probably only affecting a small number of players. And even then, so their absolute cap is going to go down to 95. So, okay, you lose out on 5% dodge. So now instead of not having any chance to get hit, you have a 5% chance. So yeah, so that's a little bit of a nerf to non-heavy armored melees, but probably one that's not going to affect that many players, I would imagine. Although I'm not the most versed in monk builds and rogue builds and these builds that build to miss instead of to mitigate. So yeah, but I just don't see it affecting too many players. So whatever. 8, charmed creatures will no longer gain the Reaper monster damage bonus. This was always a bug. The damage they do, however, would not be reduced in Reaper as players are. So they've talked about this plenty of times. There's a bug where basically when you charm a monster in Reaper, it's more powerful than it should be. And this has resulted in a lot of players just building charm bots that go in and just charm everything, charm stuff. And if you have the DC to charm stuff, they can just kill everything for you. So they want to get away from that because charming has been a little bit cheesy in Reaper. I don't have a lot of experience with that. That's just based on what I've read and what I've seen by devs and players. So yeah, so take that with a grain of salt. But I know that's something that they've wanted to cut down on. So they're nerfing that. It's not really a nerf, actually. It's just fixing a bug because they've been really clear about this. And they've always said that that's a bug. It's just they haven't gotten around to fixing that. So when you charm stuff in Reaper, it's not going to be nearly as good as it was before. So that's fine. 9, Reaper toughness is buffed. They will take longer to kill to both compensate for the damage increase and to fix the problem that level scaling was not providing enough hit point scaling for them. So I assume, I'm not, this is another one where I'm not totally sure what they mean, but Reaper toughness, I assume how the toughness feat interacts with actual monsters. So I assume that just means certain monsters that have the toughness feat will have more HP. So I'm not totally sure what that means. I could be wrong on that. Someone tell me if I am, but it sounds to me like there are certain monsters that were not scaling correctly and they just corrected that. So some monsters that had less hit points than originally intended now have the proper amount. So that sounds more like a bug fix. Okay. Number 10, new Reapers will appear one at all levels and some only in Reaper level 6 and higher. Expect some new mechanics. So that's cool. So we might see, say, like Reapers that if you kill them, they explode. I bet they do something like that, like we've seen in the Sharn expansion with the, what are they, like the little spiders that explode, I believe. We might see something like that. Maybe they'll be inventive here. I hope they're creative instead of Reapers just being another just mob that just hits you. Maybe it does something different. Maybe it throws status effects on you, or maybe there's different types that do different things. Whatever. I'm looking forward to that. That should be cool. Despite me personally not really, I play Reaper when I play, but I normally stay in the like 2 or 3 to 5 area. Although I can play like Reaper 5, 6, 7 if I have to, but it's hard, which is good. That's the way it should be. Okay, 11 hit points given out by the Reaper trees will have an upper limit based on your character level. Okay, so they list here all the different caps. So this is what I'm assuming is that when you get your Reaper HP bonuses, they are a flat bonus increase that have been applying at every level. So when you get Reaper points and you advance in Reaper trees, you can have all these hit points. But now there's gonna be a cap so that you can't go to low levels with like a maxed out Reaper HP tree and have like tons of HP. I assume that's what's been going on. I've not experienced that myself because I don't really TR anymore. I'm assuming that's what's been going on. I've heard players say that. So yeah, there's now just going to be a cap. Well, obviously that's going on because they wouldn't be making this change if it wasn't. So now instead of being able to benefit from all your Reaper points at lower levels, you can only benefit. It's going to scale, but it's not going to affect. This has no effect at cap or really past level 26 because, as they posted here, there's no limit on the upper amount, which would be silly if there's a limit since that's the max level. And why would they have HP in the tree that you can't use at all? So yeah, so it's not going to affect cap characters. 12. The appearance of lost souls will scale with party size and Reaper skulls. There will be fewer appearing for smaller parties and on lower Reaper levels. So lost souls are the little SP gems that drop as you kill stuff in Reaper. So sometimes when you kill something in Reaper, it'll drop that gem, and anyone in the party can touch it, and it'll grant some spell points back. And they've done that in the past to help offensive casters be able to keep up in dungeons, so they don't just burn all their SP on certain mobs. It also has helped out like healers as well. But I think the original intent of that was to help like sorcerers and these like really SP these classes that use a ton of SP, really help them out. And I've always felt like there's been probably too many of those dropping, so it makes sense for them to scale that back a bit. So I think that's fine. And this probably has to do a little bit with passes they've done they're doing passes on Wizard and Sorcerers. That's going to help make them a little bit more SP efficient in certain ways. So maybe that's a response to that. I can only theorize. Okay, last one, 13. Reaper dungeons now use the same over and under leveling XP penalties as normal dungeons. Characters cannot enter a Reaper dungeon if they're too high level as compared to the dungeon. In the heroic levels, this limit is more than 4 levels above the base challenge rating, and in epic levels, this limit is more than 6 levels as it is on live. As always, epic characters cannot enter heroic dungeons. So they've already told us that, and I've actually talked about it in my last video. So basically what it means is that you can now be like 1 additional level above where you were before. Like you could run instead of being at level. And in order to not get an XP penalty, instead of having to run, like, say you're a level 26 character, the way it works now is if you're level 26 and you run a level 26 dungeon, you won't get any XP penalty. But if you're 1 level above it, if you're 27 and you're running a Reaper level 26 dungeon, you'll get I think it's a 10% XP penalty. So the way this will work now, it'll give you 1 extra level to work with. So now running a level 26 Reaper dungeon with a level 27 character means you won't get any XP penalties, so it'll work like it does as normal, like heroic dungeons. So someone correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure I have that right, but basically this just means you have a little bit of a wider range where you can run Reaper dungeons without getting XP penalties. So that's actually a little bit of a buff. So I think overall, I feel like they might be going a little too hard on the multiplier here with number 2. Like, I'm kind of surprised they hit this again, because they already hit this in Legendary Dreadnought with the nerf they're giving that. So I'm surprised with that. The rest of this is a lot of it was to be expected. And again, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. Like, I totally am not complaining at all. I think this is fine overall. Overall, I think it's fine because I do think they should buff Reaper every once in a while. It's supposed to be a challenge difficulty. So as we get power creep, we should get buffs. I'm a little surprised they're hitting some of the things they're hitting, especially this. But I'll deal with it. It's fine. I'm sure it's okay. I'll adapt. So guys, yeah, let me know what you think. Hopefully no one's like, I think in my last video the comments were pretty negative. Hopefully I don't see too many negative ones this time, but I understand if it upsets you. But again, guys, you shouldn't be upset because again, Reaper's supposed to be a challenge, so they should make it harder. Because we look, that's what we want. Like, as players, we want that. Reaper is fun because it's challenging, so we need it to remain challenging. We can't just let power creep overcome Reaper and make Reaper like, in 2 years I don't want like Reaper 6 and 5s to be like the normal thing that is being run, and like Reaper 10 not be that hard. Like, I don't want that to be the case. So yeah, I want Reaper to be made hard. So this is a good thing, guys. Overall, it's a good thing. Even if you aren't happy about a few changes here and there, I think overall it's a good thing, and some good quality of life stuff, and they're getting rid of some cheese. So yeah, guys, let me know what you think about these changes. That's going to be it for this video. I will see you all next time. Have a good one. Take care.